bring the rest of my crew with me so that I could spread the load a little bit, but unfortunately, just about everybody else is in some level of school training today, whether it be school resource officer, Anna Maria's having a tabletop for school shootings and things like that. So unfortunately, all the gang that I hope to bring with me is not here, so we'll try to wing it. A lot of familiar faces in the crowd. For those that don't know me, I've been chief for 2 years in April, but I've been here, this is my 32nd year with the town, which is hard to believe. So it's been a good run. I grew up in Princeton. I've lived in Sterling, Princeton, and a little bit in West Boylston. I worked at the airport as a flight instructor and also did some airplane fueling back in the day, and I worked at Sterling Inn. So pretty much my whole career life revolves around Sterling. So it was nice to be here finally when I did get a police job, and then to close it out as chief. They asked about some of the goals for the year. They asked for an agenda, and I really didn't have one because I was in the middle of some other projects. But currently, we have 14 officers, myself, a lieutenant, 3 sergeants, and 9 patrol officers. We generally have between 2 and 4 officers on each shift, depending on what shift and what day. The patrol officers' schedules rotate, but at a minimum, you have 2 officers here in town every day responding to calls. We've been very lucky. We have an excellent staff. Chief Chamberlain gets a lot of credit for the people he hired, and the people that are here now get the credit for continuing that legacy. A lot of departments these days are having a lot of hiring crises. They can't get people in. Back when I started, you'd have 60 or 80 applicants for the job. When I talked to the West Boylston chief a couple months ago, he had 4 applicants for his new position. So people just aren't coming in. And also, on the dispatch side of things, that job is getting more and more technical, requires a lot more precision with the computers, and because of emergency medical dispatch and things like that. And those people aren't walking in the door. So we're lucky to have the full staff that we do now currently. We have a couple of retirements coming up this year for police and possibly some dispatch that I'm honestly worried about filling because we have such good staff now, and knowing that the people just are not there at the door lining up. Some other departments across Massachusetts have started with signing bonuses because they can't get people in the door. So the townspeople have made it a welcome environment. The select board has been really good to public safety, and that builds on it versus some of the other local towns that might not be as forthcoming. So we are really lucky to have what we have here in town, and the people couldn't be any better, so that's good. What else have we got that I was going to talk about? I brought some notes just so I would have some of the specific figures. Lieutenant Fugere has put in for a couple grants this year that we received. One is a highway safety campaign for $20,000. You guys may have seen the speed boards around town. I think we're up to 8 of them now. They're about $2,500 a piece that we've got on grants. They are having some impact. We've got a new campaign, I guess you could call it. It's a black cat device. It's a small suitcase that covertly records speeders so that you can have, it doesn't have the interaction with the screen, so people don't know that they're being recorded. We can get a more accurate view of the traffic and when the problems are, how we can assign people to those streets at what point in time. And some of the complaints that we have, we're finding that the speeds aren't quite as high as people think, which is good. But other ones we are finding places that we should be enforcing more, which is working out really well. So if you happen to see a little 12 by 12, 14 by 14 box on a telephone pole around town, because the first weekend we put them up, I got several text messages. What are these things? So if you see that, that's what it is. And again, it's covert, so nobody really, you do have kids that speed up around the speed signs to see how fast they can get it. Luckily ours shut off, but some other towns, theirs continue to accelerate until
smile when you go by.
You're right. So that's working out really well. And then we've got some state money for extended radar patrols, drunk driving patrols, and things like that. So I know speeding is one of the complaints in town that everybody has, and we're attempting, I think between the speed signs and the black cats, we have, in the last 2 to 3 years, we have $30,000 in equipment, and then with an extra, I think $10,000 in personnel costs this year. We hope to make some impact. Sergeant Ferguson and I did a study a couple years ago. We went through all our tickets to see who we were stopping, and almost 40% of them were town residents. So there's a certain level of self-responsibility that we're not quite maintaining. Because the people speeding on Holden Road aren't from Northborough. They're the people that live farther up Holden Road and just over the line in Holden, or some of the other back roads. Some of the main roads, we're having out-of-town people causing the problems, but we're kind of self-perpetuating our problem. It's not in my backyard. This guy over here complains, but doesn't have a problem speeding by this guy's house. So we all need to do a little better. All of us. It's cars are a lot quieter, smoother. Sometimes you just don't notice. You buy a new car, next thing you know, you're speeding. But with the monies from the state, we're hoping to make a little more impact this year, especially where now we can see the actual times that people are creating the violations. The second one the lieutenant got was a $44,000 award for a burn grant. All that is going to go to active shooter training. And unfortunately, the 3 officers that are out in training today are all at some level of school shooting or school training. Detective Chase is in school resource officer training. Lieutenant Fugere is at a tabletop for school shootings. And Officer DePietro is also in a school shooter class, an active participation school shooter class. So unfortunately, it's a reality of today's world that we have to prepare for these things. Luckily, some of it is also applies to some of the bigger businesses in town that we have. So what we learned to use over here at the Choxon School can be used at Ladon or some other building, which is good. So it's not a singular use training, which is good. Let's see. Some of the trainings we've had this year are preventing officer crisis, duty to intervene, digital evidence, hate crimes, interpersonal violence, some of our legal updates, CPR. We also do our annual TASER certifications, firearms qualifications, and with police reform, they've been making it a little more difficult to get training. 20 years ago, you sent an officer to firearms training, and they were certified across the board for pistols, rifles, shotguns, everything. Now, with the way police reform has come through, we are breaking down those things into pistol training, rifle training, optics training, and on top of that, they have to go to an instructor school. So officers like Scott Johnson, who's been here for 30 years, and taught for most of those 30 years, and now had to go back to a 40-hour class to be certified as an instructor now. So the legislation was good in some ways, but in other ways it created burdens that nobody was really prepared for. So now we're resending people who have been trained for years back into classes that they've already been doing for years. So it's an interesting problem we're having that will be resolved at some point in time, but it's taking a little while to get through. One of the things that under Chief Chamberlain we started doing, kind of with me, and we've continued, is leadership training. We're trying to send most of our supervisors, well, all of our supervisors, and we're trying to work our way through the actual patrol for sergeant officer, master leadership, and some of the FBI classes. The FBI Academy has it's like a master's level leadership class. It's not how to be an FBI agent. It's for chiefs and things like that that can go to learn how to be better at their job. Because it's very selective, they started doing regional locations, and they break it down into 3-week classes, 3 5-week classes. And we're trying to get everybody through that. One of the things that isn't really, things have changed since I started. When I was coming up, my sergeant's training was you don't meet with your people, you separate yourself completely. And now that people learn a little more about emotional intelligence, people's emotional needs and mental needs, that's changed. And with that, we have to change. And these classes are doing just that, teaching us how to be a little more responsive to people that we work with and how to help them get through the day. What else we got on here? Taser instructor, electronic control instructor, A-Ride, which is the one at Andy's at for the school shooter, active shooter, social media training, because that's a thing. The investigations themselves are a lot more complicated, which is one of the other topics I was going to touch on while I'm at it, is the scams we're getting. Detective Chase has been great at getting people's money back, but we're still getting a lot of online scams. I know John's talked to the senior center a number of times, been working with the banks, but these people are convincing. They're getting people to go down to the bank and lie to the teller about taking out $10,000, $15,000 in cash, driving to Clinton, putting it in machines, and that money can be gone in an instant. And it's amazing how convincing these people can be. We have enough times that it happens. It's nothing to be ashamed about. If it happens to somebody, let us know. We might be able to help. Detective Chase has been really good about that. Let's see, what else we got on here? The detective's been working with the DEA and the High Intensity Drug Task Force Agency a little bit, the North County Drug Task Force. They've made some arrests here in town and other towns. Back in the earlier part of the year, we had a pursuit from the state police for an armed robbery in New Hampshire that ended up in the Little Ones daycare on Leominster Road, and that came to a successful conclusion. The suspects went to a house and told them that they were their car broke down and they could help. They actually ended up inside somebody's house, but luckily they exited before everybody showed up, so that was good. We had the catalytic converter, the Operation Cut and Run, that made the news. That was really big. That was a big ring that went into Canada. They were taking stuff, catalytic converters across the line. They did a really good job at that. 7 different addresses with 7 different suspects were arrested at one time.
Any stolen here in the town?
Yeah, we had quite a bit at LKQ and on Choxet Road, and they were in and out in seconds. Even though they had the little cages to protect them and stuff, they with these battery-powered cutoff saws, they could get out in minutes. So yeah, we had, I think it was almost $1 million worth of, or maybe it was 100,000. That might be the number, $100,000 worth of stolen.
It's about $2,000 to replace it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I can't remember the number on LKQ, but it was a high number, and I believe High Tech had some stolen, and there's been a couple other residences that had stolen over time that I'm not sure were connected, but it definitely went to the same place. Got a couple of B&Es. Detective Chase found a footprint at one of them and was able to tie it to a gentleman who had broken in all around the region, which that was really good. They had 12 charges, Worcester Superior Court on him. And let's see, the scams. Jones recovered $6,200 on one case, $11,000 on another case, and they had a proactive stop on somebody trying to take out $30,000 on one of the scams. So. Again, it's pretty, and that's just this year. It's a pretty significant number.
Chief, you know what some of those scams were, just so we start to look out for? Are they telephone things?
A little bit of everything, yeah. So they've been starting with the emails, and people are responding to that. My computer's frozen. There have been some IRS ones, if I remember correctly. So it's kind of a mixed bag. And now, from what I understand, is that with voice replicators, people are putting all their videos online. They can grab your nephew's voice from that thing and with AI replicate it. So you might actually think your relative is calling you, which is going to make things even more difficult. And so many of them are done from other countries or definitely other states that it's very hard to prosecute them on the other side. So that's why John keeps being very proactive on that. And it's amazing that these people, I mean, for the amount of effort they put in, there seems like there's something else in life they could do, but the money's there. People are giving out the money, so there's no reason for them to stop. I mean, if they weren't making money, if we could put an end to it, then there'd be nothing there for them to. So Officer Mucci's been doing the RAD program, which is a rape aggression training. Did a couple of classes this year. That's all well received. I always get an email from one of the participants that tells me that it changed their life. Really makes a big impact in people's lives, learns how to fend off an attacker. I'll be honest with you, I was surprised at how much response I get from it. So it was always a touching email after. Officer Mucci and Sergeant Ferguson work with the child seat program, which honestly in the beginning I didn't know much about. I didn't really think it was a big deal to put in a car seat. But apparently there's a lot more to it after talking to them. And they do, I'm going to say it was 100 a year, significant amount a year, getting parents, getting the seats in there safe, and it's always a complicated mess from the way I understand it. So there's a lot more to that, but again, well received within the community. Some of the discretionary money that we have, it goes towards things like that, where we can make an impact. Because our people like being out there. Community policing, back in the 80s when you'd hear about it on TV, was because the cops were running around or driving around in their cruisers with their windows up, and they weren't talking to people, so they wanted to get police officers back out on the street. We don't have that problem in town. Our officers do community policing every day. People see them in Emma's, people see them at Dunkin' Donuts, they talk to them. They're in Honey Farms, talk to people. Like, that is the essence of community policing, and we've always been really good about it, I think. I mean, even, like I said, I've been here 32 years, and I still run into people who say, welcome to town. So we're not reaching everybody, but especially after I get promoted, there were a lot of people that welcomed me to town, and I've been here for a little bit by now. But in general, we're ahead of the curve at getting people out there, providing programs to the residents to really help them have a better life. And again, the town has always been very supportive of us, the select board, and the residents have been great. It sounds like a platitude, but I am really grateful to work in Sterling versus some of the horror stories you hear from other towns in the community or around outside the community. So two things I'm looking for from you guys is any specific questions and any goals or any needs that you see we need to meet that you find that we're falling a little short, that we can do better. So any questions you have about anything in the past or anything you'd like us to work on?
You mentioned breaking and entering. What's going on around the town of that sort of thing? I think we're in a good spot. We're 15 miles less than Pittsburgh, Leominster, and 15 miles north of Wood. So
yeah, so
I don't know if we see much.
As bad as COVID was for a lot of things, it was good for that because people are home a lot more. From 20 years ago, we're down significantly. We don't have a real problem now, whereas 20 years ago, we'd have 10 or 20 a year. We're just having a couple. And the one that I was mentioning earlier, he was a professional. He was going from town to town to town. But in general, we don't really have a problem with that anymore, just by the nature that a lot of people are working from their kitchens. So that worked out pretty good for us in one way.
Thank you.
Any type of weapon that can be taken away from you, I support, but if you're not prepared to use it, then I think it's a bad idea. So it all depends on their individual person, because people come in for firearms, license to carry, for personal protection. But a lot of people haven't thought the whole process through. So if they are at a place that they would use it against an attacker, I think it's a great idea to have on them. But if they're going to get taken away and used on them, not supportive. So it all depends on the individual person.
But probably better than having nothing.
Again, as long as it doesn't get used on them. So if they're willing to be proactive with it, and within the California law, the Seattle laws, Washington. So like I said, in general, I'm supportive. But if you're not prepared to use it and haven't thought it all through, then I don't think it's going to do you any good. It might actually come back to be used against you. That's mainly the head dispatcher, Deborah Carter. So we give her most of the credit. I very rarely log in, and she almost exclusively posts. So we'll give Deborah Carter all that credit.
And then I had a question. In the future, do you plan on doing the Citizens Police Academy again?
We tried a couple of years ago, and we had very low sign up for it. So we have tried to do it once while Chief Chamberlain was here, and we may have tried it once while after I got promoted, but we had very low sign up. So I would be all for doing it if we can get the people in.
I must have missed that, because
I've
done it
You want to go
before.
through again?
yes, I would love it. I would love doing it the
Can-
first.
How about we sign you up to do the real police academy? Boylston's got one starting in a couple
You
months.
see what I did to the left of it? Like,
No, you can be an instructor.
I
I
loved
say
it,
that
I
tongue in
did.
cheek.
I just loved it so much.
We'll work on it. And it goes back to staffing. I mean, every industry, my buddy owns an engineering company in Florida. He can't get people, again, departments around us can't get people. I know Princeton's looking for 2 right now. It's just, the people just aren't there. So I can see that they're probably having the same problem. It's gonna drag out. They have state mandated timeframes to meet, and I'm not sure if they're meeting those or not. And I don't know if that'll ever end up in a lawsuit. But that might be the only way to force them into it. But right now, no, they're still really slow. So, beach cameras have been pretty successful because they do light up. We did have a number of tip overs, and then I priced out through the light department one of I think it was an American alarm camera, and it was gonna be something $5,000, not including the light department to put it up for me. So I went and bought a couple of Ring cameras off of Amazon, and we put them up. They do record. There's a lot of motion down there, and with the Ring cameras, they record every bit of motion. So it's difficult to get to but since those were put up and the lights come on, the tip overs went way down. I don't know if there's been any since then.
Well, there's no porta potty now, but I mean, they
Well,
will.
so earlier, it might have been late last year that I put those up. So trying to go into your fiscal responsibility, instead of spending the $5,000 for a camera, I went out and spent, I think it was $300. And it seemed to have a significant impact because the light does come on both of the cameras when people pulled in. And from my understanding, things had quieted down there, but I don't want to say that it went away completely, but they did seem to have an impact.
I had another question.
Oh.
How can we keep out of towners away from the beach when it's not officially open yet? Because we go down there a lot, like if it's a nice day, but the beach isn't officially open.
Mhm.
And we know that there are people there that don't live in town. So do we need to call you and say, can you come check this, or what's the protocol?
So out-of-towners can be at the beach, they're just not supposed to park in the lot. Now, without a beach sticker, you can't park in the lot, but anybody can be at the beach.
I thought it was the town.
Yeah, no, they can be there, they just can't park in the lot. The problem we had towards the end of last year, and we're gonna work on it with a little proactive policing this year, is that some out-of-towners were actually parking down on Chase Hill, the ice cream stand, and walking up. And they created a disturbance on a number of days, so we're gonna do some Saturday and Sunday beach patrol shifts. It's probably been 20 years since we did it, but we did have problems down there in the past. But yeah, we are having some Fitchburg and Worcester people coming out, causing a little bit of a problem. But again, as long as they walk in, there's nothing that says they can't be there. They just can't park there. So if you see a car without a beach sticker, you can call us and we can look into that. Well, that's a little bit tougher only because some people buy new cars, they forget to get the sticker. So 50% of them are really town residents, they just didn't get the sticker. But, going back to your fiscal responsibility before I forget
Well,
about.
it's 5-year plan, your 3
5-year plan.
major goals.
Well, 5 years, towards the end of my career, so I'm actually planning on sitting down this month with the lieutenant and the sergeants on our 1, 5, and 10-year goals, because that will extend past the end of my career. So hopefully we have good people that I hope to take over after I leave, so we'll have them all in place when I leave. We're really well-staffed right now. My only one concern in the future will be that the detective's getting a little bit overloaded. Again, with the scams and the drug investigations and things like that. So my goal at some point within the next 5 years would be, hopefully within the next 3 years, would be get him some level of assistance, whether it be a 40-hour assistant detective or just somebody who does it on another shift, works on the 3 to 11, it can take some of that burden. But as in terms of the staffing we have now, I think we do very well, and I don't see it needing to expand unless we were to have a boom growth like Rutland did years ago. I think we're doing very well with what we have. We're able to handle all the calls successfully. I said when I got promoted, the business of doing business is a lot harder these days. There's a lot more records that need to be kept. Post requires a lot more. Training requires a lot more. So unfortunately, we are taking officers off the road a little bit more for these new mandates, which the lieutenant and I try to handle. But like yesterday, one of our tasers was malfunctioning, and my sergeant who handles that had to do that. So he spent hours on the phone with the company trying to get a new one and things like that. But our staffing at 14 right now is really good, and I believe that that should be for the foreseeable future, unless something were to change within the town itself. Goss, he's been fantastic in helping us out. We still can't get our heating and air conditioning to work. Our cell room was at 60 degrees the other day. He just did some auditing. We're having a company come back in. So that would be my first priority. If we can keep the officers comfortable and the prisoners, that would be fantastic. Yeah, so the station was built with the future in mind. So we are pretty good right now. I would like to have another office, but again, if we stay at our current 14 for the next 5 years, that's good. Unless we had a significant boom in town where we had to increase staff to 16, 18, I think the station we have is pretty good. We have the locker rooms for the staff, the men's and the women's rooms. We have a little more space upstairs that I could move the lieutenant or the sergeants or make a roll call room or things like that. So we do have the room. If we're talking 25, 50-year plan, then obviously the station is not up for that. But that's something I'm not prepared to speak about because I don't have the background in it. But for what we have now, we do really well. Last year at town meeting, the voters were kind enough to let us do prefab of our back room. I mean, it's used for the kitchen, all the report writing. As soon as you come into the building, you go through it. That's taken a little while to get going. I believe they're supposed to start in March. But we're going to be redoing some of the cabinetry to allow officers to have more storage space just besides their locker, give them better writing areas and things like that. So we've taken a little bit towards that. But I would need to talk to an expert for anything real long term. But as far as the next 5 or 10 years, the station we have is good. And just getting what we have up to good condition. Again, with the heating and air conditioning, it's just frustrating to go into my office at 62 degrees on a Monday morning and have to put on my little electric heater just because the system doesn't know where to route the air. I'm dumbfounded that after all these years of building buildings, we haven't figured out how to route air to different rooms, even though we have thermometers here. It's a very confusing thing to me. So in short term, we're pretty good. Chief Chamberlain, I think it was 3 years ago, they got some money from town meeting. So we have one that does the dispatch center specifically, and we just added a second this year, finishing up that money, that does my office, Ms. Metcalf's office, the meeting room, and cells. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, they put the thermometer in the front lobby, with the thermostat in the front lobby that gets opened and closed. So I have to set that at 76. And again, Chuck's working on these problems. So I have to set that at 76 so the cell rooms stay above freezing. But we are left with the lieutenant's office, the sergeant's office, the detective, the evidence room. All those are on the other system, which these mini splits are supposed to help this problem back here. So until we get everything finalized, we're not going to see what the impact is made in the back half of the building. But we may end up with another couple of mini splits just to handle the back half of the building.
They work good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, for the amount of electricity they use, and I just think they can be very efficient.
Yeah, no, it would have been, again, we got the building, it seemed like a good idea, but some of the pumps we had were oversized for our building, and I listened to the confusion and rumors over there. I'm not sure exactly what is true, but like we were set up for a skyscraper-sized building, and that created problems in and of itself. That the system couldn't work efficiently, and then some of the diverters don't work, and it's still been a mess. I mean, years ago, Chief Chamberlain used to come in first thing in the morning, go down and bleed the furnace just so we could have heat. I mean, he got tired of paying the bill. He would go in every morning and bleed the furnace, fire it back up.
Yeah, well, you know that the contractor went bankrupt while he was building the place.
Right.
So,
He built this, he did this one too.
oh, yeah, but they just stuffed the wiring into the ceiling, and it was, I can remember, one valve would open and the other one wouldn't, and so you get a call for heat in one place, but the main valve that provided it wouldn't open, and so, you know, it was really kind of confusing, but.
That's what we found is still happening, and I guess some of them were a maintenance issue. Some of them should have been cleaned out, I guess there's some type of trap before it, and I don't believe Chief Chamberlain was aware of it, I certainly wasn't aware of it, and because of Chuck's background, they started looking into that, and so hopefully, again, because of the COVID slowdown, still waiting on parts. But once we get those installed, we're hoping it makes a significant impact, but it's been a long road just to get heat. A friend lives in Florida, so I try to go down and mooch off him because he's very successful. And I said I would never move down there, but this last storm, I was walking to the bottom of the driveway, man, it's just smashed my face off the pavement. I'm having second thoughts about that whole Florida thing at this point in time. But, so any suggestions that you think we could do a little bit better, that you see needs that were not being met, or any more follow-up questions?
The plan, what's the plan for 62 and 140? Is it a roundabout?
So the last meeting, I'm not very, I don't get invited to a lot of those meetings, but the last one, we went out with the DPW, the town administrator, and walked the property. Apparently they have guidelines for traffic lights, and there's a couple of things that have to be met. We meet some of them, but not all of them. But the one that we don't meet, if I understand correctly, can be an exemption. So the odds are, yes, it will be a roundabout. But during that conversation, they were still looking at both.
Is that our worst intersection in town?
You know, it used to be. And then for a long time, I mean, 10, 15 years, it really wasn't. And all of a sudden, it's had a new resurgence. I don't know what's changed. Maybe people coming back to work after COVID, but for a long time, it really was. We used to go to some really bad accidents, and then they just disappeared. Kind of like, knock on wood, Pratt's Junction and North Row Road. We used to go to a lot of accidents there. It's still a very, even though with the reshaping, it's still a very dangerous, but the accidents are pretty limited. So if you want to go by strict numbers, I'm going to probably still go with the roundabout, just because we have a lot of people hitting curbs, a lot of little rear enders. We don't have any more real serious injuries like we used to, but if you're just basing on numbers, it's probably still Route 12, which I'm going to print those numbers up for my annual report, so off the top of my head, I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely picked up over there again.
The two new ones on Route 12 are just excellent. It's just an excellent way to deal with it.
Yeah, you know, I was
Except if
skeptical.
you're going the wrong way.
I was skeptical. It does happen, it's amazing.
Unbelievable,
It
isn't
does.
it? They come off 190, take a left.
Yeah, I don't,
A lot of the signs tell them to, Clinton Hospital, take a left, you know, if they're not really paying attention. You know, the signs need to be changed so they have the loop, you know, take a right and then a left.
Yeah, I was skeptical in the beginning, but they have definitely eliminated any of the serious accidents.
We used to have a lot of bad ones there. I remember the station wagon and the motorcycles.
Yep. Yep. Yeah,
These
was that
two-
the mechanic that was out on test from American?
Yeah.
Turned into a front of a car, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he had no chance.
Yeah. Had a lot of bad accidents in town. I mean, traffic light at 140, I mean, we're lucky to have that. I think there were 5 fatals before they finally put that in. There's probably more, Bruce would know, there's probably more than that. I think that's what, just when the Eagle Scout did his study, there were 5 in that period of time, but. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think 62 and 140 is a speed factor from people coming 140 from both directions?
There's a little bit of a bump in the road as you come past Johnson's. I think that it interferes with it. I think a lot of it comes to inattention. Like people with the 12-inch screens in their dash, their little phones, even though cell phones are illegal, you can still see the people on all day. Everybody's in a hurry. Go back to the speeding complaint. Everybody's in a rush to get somewhere. Nobody comes to a complete stop. So my personal opinion, with no facts to back it up, is that it's just inattention. Because I've been going through there for 40 years and have yet to get in an accident. So
I think there's a line of sight issue.
There is
As you
a-
look north on 140,
there is a little bit.
this 62 goes across.
And the
It's-
lights from J&J are a little, so if there's a car coming, those lights sometimes can be blinded out by that. So yeah, I don't really know the answer to your question, but that's my guess.
Going west on 62 into 140, it's a flashing red light, and the signs are there now, the flashing signs are good. So my biggest episode there was the guy came, he stopped, and then he started going even though I was coming right next to him.
Yeah, which
What he's doing.
goes right to the inattention. I mean, the daytime running lights, I think, have helped a little bit on most cars these days, but people are just in a hurry or looking at their screen, and I've done it. I mean, you're changing the radio station, you're not really intending anything. Next thing you know, you're going over the fog line. It happens, and there's just so many people driving.
If you're driving and you notice an area where personal property, their shrubs are like obscuring your ability to drive carefully, like around a curb or anything, should we call you, or is there anything you could do? I mean, or is it?
Yeah, I think that would be the DPW. I mean, I know. Yeah, I know the town owns a certain bit of frontage, 6 feet, I believe, something like that, and they might be able to. I don't know why. That's just the name they chose. We just got that towards the end of last year, and now with the snowbanks, it's a little tougher to use. I'm hoping in the spring when that comes around, that treasure trove will be better in and of itself. The speed signs do record information, but it's a lot harder to get the data, and it doesn't display in a way that's user-friendly. We tried to do that, so they are good visual reminders, but they weren't really getting us the data.
They don't photograph plates as you're going by?
No. Even the Black Cat, it just records the speeds coming and going, and tractor trailers, motorcycles. So, like if you're on Chase Hill, you can see X amount of tractor trailers went by versus X amount of motorcycles. And again, it tells you the time of day that the most violations are happening, and then it gives the 85th percentile, which speed limits are based off of it. Gives us the guidance of whether or not the software believes it's someplace that needs to be enforced vigorously, or if it's a minor problem. And for the most part, we are finding things that aren't quite as bad. I mean, 40 miles an hour on a back road sometimes looks fast. And people are going 45, 46. We're not stopping them for 46 miles an hour and over. But some people think they live in a 30-mile-an-hour zone where they really don't. So it's not something we can enforce. So we're finding, for better, I think it's better, is that we don't have quite as big a problem, but we still have a problem that we need to address. So this week, like I said, we can work a little smarter because the problem's smaller, so now we can focus a little more over there versus wasting time on streets that really aren't having a problem. Residents see it, think it, but the data doesn't back it up, which in a way, in my head, is good because it's really not a problem.
What makes it defensible
Spend
for
more
you?
time over here.
You're not doing each other. Yes, we are. It's 40 miles an hour.
Yeah, and I live on 140 in Princeton, so I definitely feel people's pain when they complain about speeders because the summer for me is ridiculous. But I know Princeton, there's nothing they can do about it. Princeton cops will sit right down the street from my house, and as soon as they go just past Hobbs Road, they just open them up and they're gone at 100 miles an hour. There's literally nothing that can be done. I mean, you control the problem for a couple hundred yards and then it goes away. But at least with this data that's coming out, we should be able to do a little better job on timing and have the resources there.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. I really appreciate it.